hundreds of churches raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we collect all that research and we're going to share that with you. We're going to give it away. And now I shall officially begin because I see we've got everybody who is going to join us has joined us. So our mission is to increase generosity without fundraising. Fundraising is very different from stewardship. The idea of stewardship comes from 1 Peter 4:10. We're meant to be conduits for God's blessing. It's very different from fundraising, which is akin to sales. We've been a success helping many churches with their capital campaigns, and we help them grow their annual giving as well. Usually we increase annual giving by 10% during a capital campaign, which is kind of counterintuitive. We're a little bit different from other church capital campaign consultants. We base the ask in prayer and not pressure. And we also help you launch a planned giving effort as well. This is a picture of me. Been doing this for many decades and got a bunch of kids and a lovely wife. And my avocation is innovation research. Some of that actually comes to play here. Time for us to innovate. Now I'm joined by Daryl Prater, one of our senior consultants. We worked together more than a decade. One of my favorite pastors. He's a rector at St. Thomas the Apostle, Father Gar Demo, and Steve Church, who's a professional in the engagement by cell business. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Now, unfortunately, this time of this crisis has put us in the worst of times. Under the best of times, Gallup polling says that 15% or a little under are engaged, 50% are marginally engaged, and the outer 35% are Christmas and Easter only. They've also discovered that 1% of our congregants fall in a category that are less than favorable. They find almost anything they can to complain about. And so they test our patience, but we shall love them through it anyway. Worship provides the primary contact. We have groups, classes, social activities that provide regular contact, but right now we have minimum amounts of engagement. We've got worship online. Everybody's shifted to worship online. We've really increased our Facebook contacts and tweets, and if you're really cool, you're doing TikTok videos, but unfortunately we're battling the news, which is always negative. So now is the moment that we have got to innovate. It is up to us right now to shift, to remold the church to meet the needs of this weird crisis that we are in. Now I want to put this in the context of giving and generosity, because my core belief is that stewardship is that state of mind and way of being that we see ourselves in partnership with our Creator, and we seek to be a conduit for the divine. So we are discerning how we might share God's blessings with others. Now, unfortunately, the statistics say only 5% actually get it. 5% tithe. So they usually give without asking. They're usually seeking ways to give. Now, what we discovered is that a big impact is stories about stewardship have a big impact. We have a 20-year longitudinal study of 100 churches who just did that. Once a month, they told a stewardship story. They didn't ask for money, but they just talked about a lay volunteer would talk about their relationship with God and sharing because they want to be a conduit for God's blessing. And the result was giving doubled as a percentage of per capita income. That's a statistic worthy of note. We know that prayer and discernment facilitates generosity. Now, for the average person, most of us give 2% or less of our income to the church. The key factors to facilitate the movement from 2% to a more generous state, these three, A, B, and C. Involvement in decision-making at its core means listening. Now, we've got a new tool, SurveyMonkey. It's free, it takes no time. We can automate that. Social connecting, we've got all kinds of social media and more. Technology is on our side. And then volunteering. Now I want to stop and pause and look at volunteering for a moment. Our statistics say if a person is a volunteer on behalf of a project or a church or a ministry or a campaign, their giving is 11 times more than if they're not a volunteer. So we've got to find a way through distance, through the use of technology, that we can facilitate a person lending themselves, lending their expertise and their time to the well-being of the church? And if so, we'll be able to measure its impact through their level of generosity. Now that final bullet, we've got to ask them. We know that. We have to present at least 4 of those a year, not 1 a week, but 4 per year, where people have the chance to give. But I set it as a giving context, as really those are metrics for how well are we doing with engaging our people. Now, what do we engage them about? I propose that we engage them in these 6 different dimensions. Stewardship stories, that's a one-way process where we are going to inspire them. Prayer and discernment, we're sharing with them, but then it's going to be an internal process. The third one is involving them in decision-making. It's in essence a listening process. Social connecting, we've got wonderful tools for that now. Volunteering, this is going to be a challenge, but this is going to be our area of greatest impact. And then we're going to ask them as well. So these are the content of our engagement, and this is the technology for engagement. Now we're going to spend the bulk of our time looking at the technology of engagement. And I invite you to ask questions. At the bottom of your screen is if you hover your cursor along the bottom, you'll pop up a chat window. Click there, type in your questions, and they will pop up for us. Now, let me pause just to talk for a moment about the most simple of technology, mail, which we forget about because technology is upon us. But I have before me my envelope that I get every month from my church that's got my donor envelopes in it. Now, this has kind of fallen by the wayside. I've got a bunch of envelopes in here. And they are for different asks as well. This is an international solicitation. This is St. Vincent de Paul. This is for the building. This is for the Peters Pence. This is my regular weekly giving. But if you just look at every single one, none of these are addressed to the church. So I cannot put a stamp on any of these and mail these. These are designed for me to be in church. So if I want to give, I've got to figure this out. I've got to get an envelope, get a stamp, put it in there, and do that. Now, this is just one way of engaging, but we generally have abdicated our relationship with the post office, and they're tanking, we know that, financially. Mail is not going out. I don't want to give up on mail. I want us to consider that. Giving is one dimension. It is a metric of engagement. Now, we can continue to mail. We know a very small part of your congregants don't have access to computers and don't have a cell phone that their life rotates around. Think of them. Think of daily rituals. My 90-year-old mom, it's a big deal when she goes out to get the newspaper. It's a big deal when she checks her mail. She looks for something in the mail. She hopes she gets something in the mail. So I don't want to give that up. That's our simplest one, and I don't want to take very much time with that. But I want you to keep that as an arrow in your quiver. That's part of your repertoire, okay? Now, let me shift to number 2, phone calls, okay? I'm going to in a minute call on my coworker, Daryl Prater, who is an absolute maestro of engagement. He's sophisticated, suave, brilliant in so many different ways. And the way he serves churches is to use technology to engage people. And it's not necessarily asking, it is through connecting. And in a moment, I'll be asking him some questions. Number 3, we're going to talk about social media and Facebook. And when we do that, I'm going to call upon one of my favorite pastors, Father Gardimo, the pastor of St. Thomas, the St. Thomas Episcopal Church. We've worked on several capital campaigns with him. And number 1, he is hilarious. I mean, he's a deeply spiritual person, but he is hilarious. I look forward to his social media when I check on it. It's entertaining and uplifting. It's a little bit miraculous. I want to talk about email, and when we are in the midst of email, I'm going to screen share with you and talk about my favorite new technology that will increase your email effectiveness. Now, I've attempted to stratify these because I want to put email in its proper position. It is more effective than social media for a call to action. It's dramatically more effective. And there's a way to get a higher open rate, which is including video. So I'll share with you my favorite technology. Number 5, texts get open 98% of the time within 3 minutes of receipt. Should we be doing that? Yes, we should. Unfortunately, churches are generally behind in texting, but I'm very fortunate to have a gentleman named Steve Church who does this professionally. His firm, Text to Engage, and the allied organization, Text to Give, are a real blessing to those of us in the church world. I don't want to be a salesman for Steve. He can do that himself. But I've asked him if he could walk us through what does it look like by text, and what things could we do, and ballpark, what does this cost, and why should churches be looking at this? And then the final thing we'll look at is Zoom, which is what we're doing right now. There's a little feature in Zoom that I want to tell you about, which I think is just spectacular for engagement. But let's start right now with my coworker. Here we talked about mail to the 30% who look for mail. Let me just skip right by that. Now let me talk about phone calls. And this is a picture of the handsome Daryl Prater. No, he's not a supermodel. He is a church consultant. And he's going to talk about Our Lady of Lourdes. Daryl, how art thou, my good man?
I'm doing great. I have more gray hair than in my picture.
Well, Daryl, fortunately, you have hair. You have some.
I do have hair. I do, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to be on the webinar today.
Well, thanks for joining us, buddy. So I'm very impressed with the work that you're doing with Our Lady of Lourdes. In Atlanta, COVID arrived right in the middle of your capital campaign there, and you had to put everything on pause. And you shifted from a fundraising orientation to a church community building agent for change. So tell us what you're doing there about engaging people at this time.
Well, so about the middle of March, it was evident that we needed to move the capital campaign on into the fall, and that the priorities of the church was, like you said, Dennis, engagement, reaching out to those who are most vulnerable to isolation, provide opportunities for online opportunities for parishioners to talk, to ask for prayer requests, to discuss, and also to provide spiritually uplifting opportunities online. So that's what's really driven the work of the teams in the last 2 or 3 weeks, as well as will through probably on into the summer. So one of the pertinent groups that deal with phone calls is the ambassadors team. They typically, in a capital campaign, will do a couple of rounds of phone calls, checking to make sure parishioners got their materials, to make a prayerful decision financially, see if they have any last-minute questions, and then remind them of Commitment Sunday. Then there's a follow-up round of calls that happens 2 or 3 weeks after Commitment Sunday to just remind folks there's still an opportunity to give. So that's definitely a stewardship capital campaign message. We've come up with a totally different script that is more of a check-in script. So the caller, the ambassador, would say, hey, I wanted to check in with you to see how you're doing during this time of uncertainty. Do you have a few moments to talk? And then the ambassador would proceed with seeing how the person is doing, asking if the parishioner has any particular prayer needs to be shared with the pastor, the rector, or possibly even a prayer team, recognizing that some prayer issues may be more sensitive, and just the pastor would be someone they would pass that along to. Then a third thing on the call would be, do you have everything you need at this point for staying inside in your living in these days and weeks that we're going through right now? And then if they have needs, we can be prepared to help them either through the church or through some local agencies and services to provide perhaps counseling, food bank, prescription drug delivery, anything along those lines. And then just a reminder that that the church is there for them, and that we want to make sure that you are taken care of during this time. Also, one thing that we added, Dennis, was what is one of your favorite things about Our Lady of Lourdes or the church? And then we let parishioners know that we're going to be compiling these and putting these in a format that we can share with the church family in 2 or 3 weeks after the calls, which is kind of more of an uplifting opportunity for us to be reminded about all the great things that the church plays in the life of us as parishioners, as well as the church and community.
Okay, that's awesome, Daryl. So I got a question that just popped up that came from my chat bar at the bottom. You can ask a question if you click on Q&A and enter your information in that, and it'll pop up on my screen. Question is, so you're not asking for fundraising, correct?
That is correct. There's nothing about these, COVID-19 check-in calls with parish families that has to do with money, unless the parish family, needs something. But that's mostly more tangible things like food, prescription delivery, those kind of things. No fundraising.
Okay, so another question. How many calls per volunteer?
That's a great question. Church development, we typically recommend about 15 calls per person, per caller, but that could go up to as many as probably 20 to 25, depending on how many callers you have available. But 15 is kind of the sweet spot.
Okay. How much time does this take every volunteer?
We have done some tracking of making 15 calls and just making the calls at a regular pace, not counting any callbacks, takes about an hour. So I would say, you might be looking at an hour, 2 hours at the very most, but I would say it'd be more like an hour and a half total. And generally we structure this over a period of days, like do your calls at your convenience. Yeah. over a period of maybe 5 or 7 days. We give the callers, these are good times to call generally. These are not such good times to call. Okay.
All right, one last question. Are you calling just your active parishioners or the inactive ones also?
We are calling inactive and active because this is an opportunity to reach out, and we're not running the risk of turning off people because, oh boy, there's going to be an ask for money leading up in this call. But it's a genuine check-in and then a reminder to the person, whether they're active or inactive, that you are an important part of our church. We want to stay up with you. Please let me know if there's anything else that I can do for you. It's a good opportunity to check in with all families if you can.
Okay, great. All right, Big D, thank you. Don't go away. I might have a couple more questions, but I'm going to shift to social media. And my hope is that my friend Gar Demo from St. Thomas the Apostle Episcopal Church has joined us, and I will rely on my technology expert, Meredith, to let me know if he has, and if he has, he will join us. And you can see by these two images that he has a very interesting approach to engagement. So Meredith, has Father Gardemo joined us? There he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Gar, it's great to see you, buddy.
We're working on that payroll protection thing, and the banker called, and I had to get somebody else on the line, and it had urgency to it. I apologize for being late. So.
Oh man, no problem. Your timing is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I just clicked on this page, and I just opened to show them the best picture of you that was copied somehow and made into a movie or a series of movies. I understand. Don't know the whole history, but apparently you're quite the role model of leadership. And then the second picture that I've got presented there is perhaps the most innovative way to engage a body of leaders, for which I'm very jealous. I wish I would have thought of axe throwing as a way to build relationships.
It was really fun. Non sequitur kind of, and it was a group of people that wouldn't normally do that. It was a blast. So
Oh, that's totally awesome, man. I think I'm going to get my daughter's volleyball team to
there you
do
go.
that same thing, because that same motion, they're all good at that same exact motion. Well, anyway, buddy, I just would like to, I like your social media. I like your Facebook entries. You're naturally a funny person. You've got, you're the very first person I've heard of outside of comic books to refer to one of their children as Spawn. I think that's a very creative way of thinking about that. But you're very readable and you're fun and you got a bunch of followers. So in this time of isolation, how are you changing the way you approach social media?
Well, there's two things that sort of have happened. One is obviously we're in a shelter in place or shelter at home location, and churches were not considered places that could be open. And I agree with that determination because of the danger of being in the same room together and touching and holding hands and shaking hands and all that stuff would have been really risky. We had dabbled in like online worship. We have a pretty strong social media presence in terms of primarily Facebook. We also have a little bit on Instagram, a little bit on Twitter. And so we've gravitated toward using that platform. So we're broadcasting our services live on both the YouTube live channel and also Facebook. I like it because it has a lot of engagement. And so you can feel like you are part of, when you're doing this, you can feel like you're part of a community because there's other people there. They can interact, say hi to each other, make comments. People have really gotten a lot out of that. So the biggest thing is we shifted to online worship, doing it that way. It's also been a medium for us to show images of what's happening at the church. The best thing about it is it's relatively there's no cost to it other than time. And you can reach a lot broader audience. One thing we noticed, like this last Sunday, we typically would get, on Easter Sunday, we'd have 800 people come to church, would be our average attendance. We had well over that watching online by what we know, because we had 350 live viewers at one moment, knowing that one viewer doesn't mean one person because we had families watching together. And so just by what we saw, we know we probably had 1,100 people engaging worship on the weekend. Plus it leaves it up there so they don't have to come to church at 8:45. They can watch it at 4, they can watch it the next day. And so those are lots of ways that we're sort of using that. We've done short videos, we've done short audios, we've done images, we've done lots of stuff. So the other thing is you can get lots of other people involved. It's not just me driving it. So all of our staff can use our Facebook page. We also have a lot of our lay people that our leaders have access to that. It's not just me posting, other people post as well. And I intertwine my own personal Facebook page. I don't think of it as my personal page. I use it as a ministry page. And so it's a public page. It's not just mine. But I also tell everybody who friends me, I'm like, it is also a little bit me and not just the church. So you need to understand that my humor comes across even more so on that. So that's part of what I do. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. So
yeah, you are, and I want to talk about that. It's some Facebook pages for churches are dry, and they're just church. It's just as if they're devoid of personality. And one of the things I like about your Facebook presence is that your personality comes through. You're the leader of the church. You're the servant of the church. And you're a likable chap. So it's kind of fun that you share your life and what you're interested in. It's not dry. It's full of life. Like just that picture on the right of axe throwing. It's hilarious. It's engaging. They're real humans. It's very fun.
I think part of the challenge, this is part of what I saw. Like when we did our first online worship, I don't know if you like opera, if you've ever been to an opera, but if you go to opera, and you're in the room, it's beautiful. You get caught up in the emotion. The music is overflowing in the room. Visually, it's not always that appealing. People stand and sing. It's hard to move around and dance, and and they're in elaborate costumes. They don't move much. Video, our style of church, which is liturgical, does not translate well onto a video, because if you just video it, it sort of stands still. So then how do you make it come alive? And so we've had to figure out, and the same thing with the medium of Facebook, is you have a chance for humor, you have a chance for realness. And so you can still be serious and still be, formal if you need to be, but you can also be enlivening it. And so even like we're gathering people nightly for some prayer services. We use a prayer service called Compline. And I usually, one of my kids is on there, or I've had other members on there. We interview them, we chat. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But also showing, like the vestry retreat, our board retreat, we decided to do something to sort of, we had spent time doing the visioning piece and doing the same work you do. And then we just went out for some fun, and we did axe throwing this year, and we had a blast. I mean, it was nobody except for one person on the group had been before, so it was a new experience for everyone, and it was just really fun. And there was no real skill level. It's not like you were going out and playing golf or something, and you've got somebody who can actually play and everybody else can't. Or
right. So you are making the point that I hoped you would make, which is use Facebook for showing the real life of the church and the real people. So it should not be cold and factual and informational, purely that, but it should be full of life, and it should show human beings and people interacting, and it should facilitate engagement. And I congratulate you for doing such a super job. And my hope is the people who are watching today will go to your website, St. Thomas Aquinas Episcopal Church in Overland Park, Kansas.
St. Thomas the Apostle.
St. Thomas the Apostle.
Yeah, we're right next door to St. Thomas Aquinas is around the corner from us.
Oh,
we're
sorry about that.
Apostle, yeah.
And they can find you on
Right.
Facebook too. Gar Demo, Gar
DEMO.
DEMO. So you can find Gar both ways, through his Facebook page and church and his personal page.
I think if anything in this COVID situation, we have learned that our audience is much larger than who can come to the building.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we're not going to have building worship. We're not going to have a time when we come back to the building. We still will have worship in our building. That's still the primary way we gather. But we are learning, and we knew it before, but we're learning just how wide that audience can be. And people really need that presence. And so even though it's not the same, they are getting the message, they're getting stuff. And then we've worked hard to try to make things visually appealing, and, higher quality. And it just, there's plenty of software out there that you can utilize to do some of the stuff, the live worship, if you just kind of dig around. And it's not uber expensive. I mean, you can, so yeah.
And we've got to do that. We as a church have got to do that. And what you said just a moment ago, you might have a normal number appearing at your door on Sunday, but all of a sudden, with technology, that number can be a lot bigger.
Well, we had somebody call 2 weeks ago that wanted to be baptized, that has never set foot in our church, but they've watched all of our online stuff since we started, and we know them. I mean, it's not like they're strangers to us, so it's not just a call off the street, but they've never gotten over here, but they've kind of watched our Facebook page, they've kind of seen my stuff, and they were finally like, I've wanted to get baptized, I want you to do it. And sure, we're in a crisis, but it's also just a reality of the present day. No different. I remember being right after 9/11, I think we had probably 7 or 8 adult baptisms, which is not a normal uptick for us in the Episcopal Church. Because, these crises produce spiritual moments for people. And when they are more open, and I'm thrilled to have that happen, and they've started to engage the church at a deeper level. So there's a chance for evangelism there. Who knew that just having a few online worship services would produce a baptism?
That's so awesome. I'm happy that you're a success. I'm happy that you're doing it. You're innovative, and it's paying huge dividends. And just inviting people to get involved in church. It's the best possible thing for them. So that's fantastic. All right, one last question before you go.
Sure.
Tell the truth. when you made that comment about the opera, did you somehow know that I was in the opera Carmen? Did you know that?
I did not know that, but I was also in opera when I was in college. That's was frame of reference for me. So
Well, which opera?
oh, I did 4 operas. I did Pirates of Penzance, Saint of Blicker Street, and then I was a chorister in 2 other operas. So
Well, you know, Gar, it sounds like the big difference between you and me is that you have talent.
I don't know about that. So
So, I was a matador. All I did is I dressed
well,
up in pink tights. That was
theater opera helps a little bit when you think. I mean, you know, what we do is not theater; it's real. But you know, theater is also real, but it's, you know, you also do pretend to be people. But the idea of staging and images is you know, something we do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's an interesting.
just so you know, that lightsaber picture with me, my vestry or the church board had given that lightsaber to me as a gift at one of our annual meetings, because I knew it was back when Star Wars was coming back out again, and they knew I loved it. And so I happened to have that cloak that we wear for funerals and other stuff. And so I just, as a joke, one day put that on, and somebody snapped that picture, and it's pretty awesome. So
That's pretty good, Gar. Oh man, hey, it's great to see you, buddy.
Yeah,
Thanks a million for taking a few minutes to join us.
have a great day.
All right, you too, buddy. Bye-bye. Okay, so let me cover a couple. Yes.
Whoops, sorry. This is Meredith here. We have
Meredith.
a couple questions that have come in through the chat and the Q&A, and maybe Daryl, if he's still on the call, he can speak to this. But Daryl and Dennis, if you could speak to when you're making phone calls to members, checking in on them and how they're doing, how does the ambassador address if a person on the other line brings up questions about how they can give to the church since they're not coming in person? Do they give options for that over the phone? And what if, or does it happen that people on those calls are asking how the church is doing financially, and how does the ambassador answer that question?
Daryl, you want to take that?
Sure. Those are great questions, Meredith. The first question is that for Our Lady of Lourdes in Atlanta, the church that I referenced, we created about a half a dozen FAQs, frequently asked questions, and their answers for the ambassadors, so that we could be on point with succinct answers. And that was one of the questions, is how can I give online? So we gave some very basic instructions, because it would be over the phone. Go to the church website, click on the giving box, and then scroll down till you get to online giving, and then make the choice that you would like: text to give, online giving, debit, credit, or, you know, through your bank. So we gave some simple instructions. Basically, they could find that out as they would go to the website. We also, a key part of these calls is making sure we're not putting the ambassadors, the callers, on the spot. They very well may be asked a question that they don't know the answer, even though we're training them, providing some FAQs for them. So we have a member of the campaign management team who happens to be the campaign chair. Her name is Kate Dennis, and she's the callback person. So if an ambassador would get a question, they didn't know the answer, they might respond to the parishioner something like, you know, that's an excellent question. I want to make sure that I get that answered the best possible way for you. How about if I ask Kate Dennis, our campaign chair, to call you back? I'm sure she could shed some light on your question. And then the parishioner, you know, usually feels really good about that, because they're being validated, their questions being answered. The ambassador is not put on the spot.
That's great. So just to make sure, the purpose of the calls are not to ask for money. It's just
correct.
It's that relationship building.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, Meredith, you got another question before we move?
Yes, I do. And maybe it's something, Dennis, you can speak to at the end. Karen is wondering if on the back side of the check-in calls, if you're seeing an increase in capital campaign giving. And I think that question might also be relevant to all of these engagement strategies of is there a dual purpose to them? Of course, we're trying to reach out and minister to people, but we could answer that question as well.
I'm so glad that you asked that, Karen. So a big part of our life here is helping churches with their annual stewardship efforts. So when somebody hires us to do a capital campaign, we're with them for 3 years after that, helping them grow annual giving. And usually we get a 10% per year. Recently, Daryl ran a campaign where he raised 2.5 times annual giving, and he increased the number of donors to the annual campaign by 50%, which is miraculous. And it's the second time he's done that. He did that with a church in Lee Summit, Missouri, and one in Atlanta. It's a miracle. But so we are all about raising annual giving, and we're constantly experimenting and we're constantly tracking. Let me tell you a story about a church from New York City we had as a client that did a 1-question survey of their members, and giving went up 6%. And the 1-question survey was, what might I pray for on your behalf? So they called all members of the church. They asked the 1 question. It was an Episcopal church. They gathered together. They spent time in prayer, reflecting on those prayers that prayer requests people had shared with them, and people got to talking about it. And it's so nice to have a group within the church that cares about my well-being. I was contacted with no financial intent at all, and yet people became more generous. Isn't that an interesting phenomenon? So we in the fundraising world know that engagement results in generosity, and that comes from this threshold. Most of us give 1% to 2% of our income of the church. Only 5% of us actually tithe. So all engagement contributes towards generosity. So this phone call strategy is absolutely essential. Now we're almost done. Let me shift to email and a particular technological tool I would like to share with you. And I am going to step out of my comfort zone and do a new screen share on this particular technology. Let me shift to see if I can do the whoops. And what you see before you, this is from a technological provider called BombBomb, B-O-M-B, B-O-M-B. And it allows you to embed a video in an email. And the price is very modest. I think I pay $30 a month for this service. And I shall create a video before your very eyes. Okay, I'm going to try to do a new screen share. And let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Of my limited technological capabilities. Meredith, how would I do this? Oh, here's how. Okay, now, Meredith, can you, all right, so Meredith, what is your suggestion, how I might go to my email?
I think you want to exit out of your presenter view of your Google slide.
Okay.
There's a little exit on the bottom left there.
Okay. So I'm going to exit out of, oh, there it is. Okay, there it is. Oh, great. Meredith, I'm so happy you're there. You're so much smarter than me. Okay. And I am going to compose a message to Meredith. Can you see me composing an email right now?
Indeed, we can.
Okay. Okay, this is to Meredith Snyder. Hi, Meredith. I hope you are well. Now, you see over on the right side, there is this odd symbol, icon to record. This BombBomb video app now pops up and allows me to record a video. And I don't know what just happened to it, but let me begin. Okay, there it is right there. So I do numerous videos like this every single day. So I'm now going to record a video, I hope. I'll be darned.
I bet actually it's not going to let you because we're on this Zoom meeting.
Oh, I see, because I've got two Two uses of one camera. Okay, got it. That makes sense. Okay, so were you to employ this app, this is what it would look like for you. And it's using your video camera, the one I'm using right now. And then when I'm done, I would click save. It would embed it in this email right here, and I would click on send. And it would take literally that long. It's that simple. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that phenomenal that it is just that easy? It took me how many seconds? Took no time at all. Okay, so now I've shown you that. Now tell me, Meredith, how do I go back to my Zoom?
Yeah, so your tab at the top, your Google Slides tab, and then you just hit View Present.
Oh, okay. And my View Present is right. Full screen, right? Full present. Okay, there we go. So I share that with you because the statistics say that an email with a video gets opened dramatically more frequently than an email without a video. Usually the videos that I send are less than 1 minute. It has, within this technology, the person you're sending the video to has an opportunity to respond by clicking and creating their own video in response to yours. In terms of action requests, an email with a video is dramatically higher in its effectiveness than a request for action written in the script of an email. I would encourage you to go to bombbomb.com, get their 2-week free trial subscription and see if it works for you. Send it to your family and friends. That's about the easiest technology I've ever used in my life. Okay, now enough on that. Let me move on to what I think will be the most exciting part of our presentation, that of texts. And we have the good fortune to have a living expert, Steve Church, with us, who's going to talk about engaging by cell. And this is a whole new platform, and he is truly an expert. So Meredith, if you could welcome Steve to the screen, and as he appears on the screen, then I shall shift and open up his slides. The first is Give by Cell. So Steve, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. This has been, can everyone see and hear okay?
I think you're looking good, buddy.
All right. Well, listen, this has been really enjoyable. Thank you so much for inviting me, Dennis. And you hit a couple key points early that plays right into what I want to talk about just for a couple minutes. That texting is very effective these days. You know, we have the basic text messaging platform that will allow your church to send out information that you know is going to get opened and going to get read. When we brought it out 7 or 8 years ago, that wasn't quite the case. I think the adoption rate, though, has gone through the roof. And so I think Dennis rightly says this is another arrow in your quiver. We don't want to replace email, phone calls. We want to enhance them and work with you on that. So our text messaging platform does that very well. And there's some statistics here. I'm not going to go through each of them, but it gives you the idea that nonprofits are really leveraging text messaging. The open rate Dennis mentioned is through the roof. And our platform allows you to send blast texts that are scheduled on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. Or these days, perhaps more pertinently, if there's an emergency or a change of plans or a change in schedule, you can send a text out through our platform very easily and quickly. And it's list driven. And we also don't want to be irritating people. So, you know, again, along the theme of working with the other avenues, you want to advertise on your socials via email. Say, hey, join our text messaging community. Text a word that we'll pick with you that makes sense for your church to our short code, which is 56512. But text this keyword and you become part of our text messaging community. So they've opted in because, again, we don't want people to receive texts that don't want them or that aren't expecting them. There can be one-way text or bidirectional. If people have questions, they can text back. So that one-on-one conversations can take place. So it's very easy, very efficient. We walk you through setting this up and showing you how to use it. Again, we're founded on the nonprofit side, working with them across the country, so we understand the varying degrees of technical capability. And then if we could, so that graduated to a donation platform. So our clients came to us and said, hey, we'd really like to use this to enhance our fundraising needs. And I think we have a slide or two on that. But the donation platform makes it very easy for your members to support the church. On the text messaging side, by the way, just in the last couple of weeks, we have people, our churches that are customers calling and saying, hey, we need to text out a recording of a sermon. It's been very important to their members, and that's very easy to do. But also, it's a different time, and doors need to remain open. And so people are replacing maybe fundraising galas with a donation platform that we have to raise really much needed and necessary funds. And this can be done in three different ways. You can have a credit card driven donation that's sent out via text. You may have a donation that is simply added to a cell phone bill, or working with people that are on the phone. And this is, with a lot of the churches, this is really comfortable. You may have a pledging platform where your parishioners may pledge an amount, and then you can follow up with them on the phone to complete the transaction. So we really, want to embrace ease and your parishioners being comfortable with the platform. And we have here.
Let me ask you a quick question. Forgive me for interrupting.
Yeah, no, great.
Two quick questions that just popped up. In general, are people okay with receiving text, or do you get pushback? I mean, the 98% open rate is a statistic that says to me that most people are probably okay. But I want to hear from an expert. And then the second question: does it impact their data usage?
Yes, that's a very good question. So on the first one, that's why I mentioned we don't want to irritate people. We don't want to send out text that people have, no idea where it's coming from. So that's why it's real important to be working with your other avenues, the socials and with emails, where you will advertise this texting capability, you being the church. Sure. Where you send out an announcement that says, hey, we're using texting as a real effective means of communication. To join the platform, text in a keyword that is, that makes sense to your organization, to our short code. And then once they've texted that in, they've opted in, and they become part of a list. But we don't want to just input a list of phone numbers and start texting out willy-nilly.
Right.
We want to make sure they opt in.
Right.
And then, no, the data usage that we found in our experience has been inconsequential.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Happy to hear that you're not turning people off. Okay, we got about 2 more minutes before we wrap up on texting. So how do people find out more about you? What's your website name? Yeah,
so if you go to www.engagebycell.com, that will show you all of our different platforms. And, these days, the easiest way to get in touch with me, and if you have a pencil, I'm happy to give my cell phone number too.
Fire away, buddy.
It's 925-528-9989. And we're literally available 24/7. especially, over the last month or so. Our nonprofits are tasking us with different great ideas. We're going to learn a lot from this crisis. But I'm happy we're working around the clock, so I'm happy to take questions and hear from anybody that has an interest. We really want to be working hand in hand with the other avenues to make them all more effective.
Okay, all right. So before you go, give me those again. Give me your, and
bet.
just so our listeners know, I don't have a financial relationship with Steve. I don't, nor BombBomb, nor any of the other vendors.
No, that's true. And
informational.
as far as effectiveness, Dennis and I first connected via email. So, and we are now utilizing a lot of video emails, Dennis. You bring up a great point. But our website is www.engageicell.com.
Okay.
My cell number is 925-528-9989.
Okay. All right, great. Steve, you're a blessing to us in the church world. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to send out this slide set to everybody who's participants. So at the bottom of this slide, you will see that website name. And just remember Steve Church's name, and you can ask for him if you, for some reason, did not get down his cell phone number. So Steve, thank you a million, buddy. And you can give them quotes. We have a question about cost, but you can answer that when they call you, right?
Oh, no doubt. And just to let you know, we really work on the nonprofit side on a case-by-case basis because we know there are really, varying budgets, and we're sensitive to that.
Right. And beyond that, we're on a mission from God. So thank you for your help.
It's my pleasure.
All right, Steve. Thanks, buddy. All right. So as we move towards wrapping this up, I just want to touch on one last technology for engagement. And we're on Zoom right now, and I'm sure you all have been on Zoom. There is within Zoom a unique little feature called conference rooms. Now, I've gotten to know Zoom better over the last month, as you have too. And I have discovered through a webinar I was part of that had more than 1,000 people enrolled in it. They broke us down by small group, and then we had a discussion within this conference room function. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life. I just was astonished that the technology exists to go from a town hall meeting with over 1,000 people broken down into little bitty conference rooms where all of a sudden we could have a dialogue about what is going on. So I want you to use Zoom. You probably already are, and I want you to explore and test and try it out. Now, Zoom happens to be located here in the Kansas City area, where, as a matter of fact, right near Daryl's house. And so we like it because it's a local company, but we really like it because it's so inexpensive and it is so shockingly effective. Now, I'd like to part with this one thought, that it's not just informational meant to go out. So Zoom can be used for broadcasting, but the second function of engagement is perhaps more important. We can use it as listening and engaging and building those social connections that are just absolutely vital for a church to perform. We are social structures meant to be the vessel which carries each member forward on their spiritual path. And we've got to do that in a collaborative function. And we have now got to completely pivot and shift and innovate. And we've got to do this immediately. I worry about the future of the church. I understand in Northern Europe, church attendance rates are only 4%. In this country, they're at 40% and declining. So we have got to figure out ways to innovate and be creative and do things like Garg Demo talked about. We make our offerings available electronically. Our numbers could go back up, and we've got to figure out a way to engage people. So I will conclude with the admonition, the invitation. Please take the time right now to innovate, to elevate your game so we can fulfill our responsibilities. We can fulfill that gospel mandate of engagement. My church has been a blessing in my life, and your churches are blessings to the lives of people who are members for you. So if we can help you with further topics that we're going to cover every Wednesday from here on out through the COVID crisis, please send me an email. I'll send you out these slides. And as we work collaboratively with our churches, you think of the challenges that you have and you let us know, and we'll gather together experts like we did today to help meet the needs of your church. So go forth, good luck, and God bless. Thank you for joining the church development community. Bye-bye.